Button was pressed.
Button was pressed.
Did we do everything right?
We'll find out. You're stressing about it. We'll see. We
No,
check.
I mean, what we pressed go live. Between this and dispatch and TFTC, we've cumulatively pressed live like 800 times, and I'm still not sure if it's gonna work every time I press it. It's just like, oh, here we go. Let's do it. Let's do it live.
Yeah, we're still figuring out everything on this side of things. My laptop's sitting on a stack of books. Matt's on a stack of something.
It's a
Production
stack of
quality,
headphone boxes.
it's all about the content, Production quality. I'd like to see it increase. Matt's got a nice clear camera right now, but it's all about the content. We've got a lot of content to
I
talk
guess
about today.
you don't even press go live anymore. You have Logan do it for you.
Yeah, and he's still working on it too. He gets nervous every time he hits the go live button. You should see it in person. Obviously, not in person today. Back at my father-in-law's house, on the back porch studio.
You can tell because you can hear the
Desperately quick.
birds if you're listening to the podcast feed.
You can hear the birds. We did the last trade earlier. I forgot about the noon bell. Of course, I was in the middle of an impassioned monologue, and the noon bell went off here. My neighbor's probably on his way down the mow the lawn, mid-rip for RHR. It's that time of year again, freaks. Down the shore.
It's storming here in Nashville, freaks. So if the power surges, I will join back in when the power comes back.
Yeah.
Or we might get in a situation where the power just goes out and the episode ends at that point. So just be aware, freaks.
Well, don't blame it on that. We'll be able to claim that people are censoring us and they don't want
It's
us
the blue
talking.
checks.
Just use that. Yeah, we use that as a growth hack.
It's the WEF and Blackrock are trying to divide us by getting Marty to comply with identity verification on Twitter.
No. We weaponize the identity verification to mock Blackrock
Straight cope
in the West.
Straight cope.
No,
It's
no,
going to
no,
age
no.
extremely poorly. It's going to age extremely poorly, Marty. Anyway, once Blackrock pumps their bags, we will get a generator at the park and redundant internet, so we won't have to deal with that.
Well, the redundant internet, what would that be, fiber or Starlink, which in the case of a storm would be unreliable?
It can't be Starlink because Elon's going to try and silence me, so I need redundant internet that's Elon resistant.
Yeah. The problems of our days. It's always something. It's always something. What the heck just happened? What are you doing? He flipped us? Logan, get it together back there, please. What is going on?
He's
Explain
definitely
yourself.
freaking out over there.
Do you have an explanation, Logan, or are you just going to play silent because I can't see you?
I didn't have the scene locked when I made this new thing for the remote, and apparently keyboard shortcut B just flips it to that camera that's pointed at nothing.
Oh, okay, good to know.
It's pointed at something.
Good to know. A lot to talk about. News regarding the debacle at Prime Trust was released this week. We've got good Bitcoin tech being released to market. We've got Jerome Powell on Capitol Hill saying, recession's in the likelihood of probability. But as we do, always, let's start with Clark's dashboard to check the state of the Bitcoin network. We're currently sitting at 30,630 cuck bucks. One cuck buck's going to get you 3,265 sats. Almost at a $600 billion market cap, currently sitting at $594.7 billion. We are at block height 796,436, which means that we have had a difficulty adjustment since we last met here on RHR last week, and that adjustment was a negative 3.3% adjustment. Blocks came in at 10 minutes and 20 seconds on average during the last difficulty epoch. And it seems like it fell off towards the end there because the estimate was around 2% for about a week. We are 1,900 blocks exactly from the next adjustment, which is estimated to be on July 13th. So exactly 2 weeks from today. That is looking like a 0.6% adjustment. Not very accurate, though, as we're only 116 blocks away from the last adjustment, which happened yesterday. There are currently 133,892 transactions in Clark's mempool. If we go over to Wiz's mempool, we see that there are currently 324,248 transactions. Fees per block are around 30 to 40 million sats over the last 30 to 50 million sats over the last 3 blocks. There are currently 8,000. We're over 8,000. 8,029.87 Bitcoin in unspent capacity in Samurai's Whirlpool. That is an unspent value of $246 million on the nodes. That's the state of the network.
I still think it's higher than that.
Yeah, I saw 10,000 on Twitter. Somebody referencing 10,000.
Well, no, that tweet was like, I think we'll break 10,000 because
from Econo, I think it was from.
the Keeper Wallet team just released Whirlpool on their Android app. They already had it on their iPhone app, and Eco is doing his best caps Odell, and he said 10,000 Bitcoin in unspent capacity by conference day. I don't know if he said that, but he definitely said 10,000 Bitcoin in unspent capacity. Yeah. But I remember that I believe Clark admitted that his calculation was off and he was going to fix it, but I don't think he fixed it yet. But I don't know. Verify yourself, freaks. It's high. It's large. It's growing.
It's growing. I think it's growing is the most important thing there.
What's the unspent transaction count in Wiz's mempool?
UTXO. It's
Marty.
The unspent,
you still think mempools are going to clear by Christmas? Unconfirmed.
It's 324 some odd thousand. Yeah, I'm optimistic.
You're not feeling that fee FOMO yet?
Not yet. Not fee FOMO. Maybe block clearing. Anxiety.
I still have
fees.
I still have
high priorities
some
at
channels
33 sats per byte.
That LND bug force closed channels that just haven't confirmed, that have just been sitting in limbo.
What are the fee rates at?
I don't know.
1 sat per byte.
They're low. No, I think they're not that low, but they're lower than confirmed amounts. Because they're force closes, so you don't choose the fee rate. The client does.
And the client obviously has a bad fee estimator.
I think it has something to do with what the fees are locked in at your channel. Because it's a multi-sig transaction, right? A Lightning channel is a 2 of 2 multi-sig Bitcoin transaction. And I believe when a force close happens, whoever opened the channel is the one who pays the transaction fee. And I think that fee rate is almost locked in. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
But I have these channel closes that have just been sitting there. That obviously, like, I didn't press force close. My channel partner didn't press force close. They just force close themselves, and they're just sitting there in limbo.
Hopefully, I mean, you should be praying for blocks to clear.
No, I'm sure they either time out or I could figure out a way to accelerate them. But I feel like if I go through the trouble of doing that, then I'm just going to jinx myself and mempools will clear. So I haven't gone through that trouble yet.
All right. Well, good luck. I wish you luck on those transactions.
The longer they sit in limbo, the longer mempools will be busy.
I see what you're doing there. So you're going to wait until you win the bet and then use. Well, actually, if you win the bet, we're just even. I don't owe you any money.
Yeah, but it's not about the money, Marty.
It's about being right.
It's the principle.
That's what Bitcoin's
It's
about.
about
It's not
sending
about
a
the money.
fucking message, Marty. It's about sending a fucking message.
The message is you were wrong. I was right. It's about being right at the end of the day. No.
Technically not wrong yet.
Not yet. Not yet. Yet being the key word there in that string of words. We'll see, though. We got a lot of time. It's June 29th. Got about a little less than 6 months for this bet to move in my favor. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I will say, when we initially made the bet, though, I wasn't expecting BlackRock, Fidelity, all these companies to apply for a Bitcoin ETF that could be, or could not be, approved in the third quarter of this year.
The BlackRock ETF is going to be approved. It just depends what the timeline is. It just depends when it gets approved, but it will get approved. Always bet for corruption. The suits are overthinking it.
Well, I think the approval timeline is pretty clear. It should be within 75 days of the filing when it gets launched. After that approval or denial gets denied.
No, they can extend.
They can extend. Oh yeah.
I think
So
like
you
the
pricing
soonest it can get approved is mid-August, and then they could extend, and approve it in January of next year. Is my basic understanding of it.
The SEC will do the extension.
So I think it either gets approved in August or it gets approved after the 2 extensions. But I think it gets approved.
Okay.
It's gonna get it will get approved. BlackRock owns everything, including the blue checks.
And there's been a lot of talk about what's going to be necessary for that to get to approved, predominantly revolving around the liquidity of the exchanges and their surveillance sharing with.
Doesn't matter. Overthinking it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's BlackRock.
I agree with you that it will get approved.
And it doesn't even fucking matter, because even if it didn't get approved, BlackRock trying to get an ETF is a signaling mechanism to a bunch of rich people all around the world to try and front run BlackRock. So they're pumping our bags regardless.
Yes. The pump has cooled down a bit. We're hovering right under 31,000. Pumped up to 30, and then we've been hovering. We'll see, though. We're not here for price talk, though we do think Bitcoin will appreciate pretty massively in value. We're going to talk about what's going on in the space. Prime Trust, big news this week again. What was that file that was released? Is that just receivership proceedings?
It was the bankruptcy files or something.
Refused all his business, discover a major hole. Whatever it is, it's a regulatory filing.
It was because they went into receivership. They went into bankruptcy, so there's all this paperwork that goes along with it and gets released publicly. It's like the court filing.
And we discovered that Prime Trust has essentially been running a Ponzi scheme for the better part of the last 2 years. So the backstory on how they came to run a Ponzi scheme stems from an epic blunder in private key management, or at least that's how it's being presented. Who knows whether it was overt fraud and stealing Bitcoin, or
I don't believe it, Marty.
Incompetence.
You
don't believe that it was pure incompetence?
No.
I find it hard.
Well, I will say at the very least, their official claim is they realized in December 2021 that they accidentally lost a bunch of customer Bitcoin, and it is June 2023, and we're just finding out about it. So that period between December 2021 and June 2023 is straight up fraud, no matter how you cut it. But I also, I wouldn't be surprised if someone has that Bitcoin somewhere.
Yeah. And so diving into the details of how this fraud came to be, apparently in 2021, I believe in June 2021, Prime Trust transitioned their
January.
custody. January 2021. So the beginning of 2021, they transitioned their custody from an in-house solution to Fireblocks. And for you freaks who are unaware, Fireblocks uses multi-party computation to do security for crypto assets more broadly. So they do Bitcoin and all the shitcoins as well. And they basically run the back end of a bunch of exchanges and third-party custodians that touch Bitcoin and shitcoins. And so in 2021, January 2021, Prime Trust moved from their in-house setup and started leveraging Fireblocks. And at some point in 2021, the story that they're going with is that they began, for some reason or another, feeding addresses to their customers from their in-house setup, their legacy address setup, that they thought they were pulling from Fireblocks. And so that accumulated a bunch of Bitcoin into a key setup that they claimed to not have had access to. And so there was a period of time where they were just dumping Bitcoin into public
Into the old
addresses
wallet.
associated with keys, into old wallets that they claim they don't have access to anymore. And so that built up basically a hole in their balance sheet that they then used US dollar balances from their customers to try to make back by speculating in shitcoins.
No, they were using customer dollar balances to try and buy back the lost assets secretly. I mean, look, I will say this. First of all, so they had old wallets, and then they transitioned to Fireblocks, and then they had new wallets, and supposedly they kept sending Bitcoin to the old wallets, and the old wallet keys are lost. That's the sum up of their explanation. And then they found out that about a year later, in December 21, is when they supposedly realized that. And then they kept it quiet and tried to use customer funds to fill the hole of customer Bitcoin and other shitcoins. If they in fact were sending it to old wallets and there wasn't actually stolen Bitcoin there and stolen shitcoins, then they should have a full receipt of all of those addresses that they were sending to. And we should be able to check the different blockchains and see that those funds have not moved. And those funds should presumably never move. If they ever move, that means that money was stolen and not lost, and that, a extremely egregious fraud occurred. But with all that said, the cover up that followed is straight up criminal behavior. Is what happened, no matter how you cut it. I mean, they covered it up for almost 2 years, unbeknownst to presumably their business clients and the ultimate end retail users of those business clients. Meanwhile, Scott Purcell, who was the founder of Prime Trust, at some point during that period left Prime Trust and started Fortress Trust. And he is currently being sued by Prime Trust subsidiary bank, BANQ, for taking corporate secrets and proprietary information to basically launch a competitor. But I find it hard to believe that he's not complicit. Once again, not a lawyer, and I've only briefly looked at these documents, but I find it hard to believe he's not complicit in what went down in Prime Trust. I mean, he was in charge at that time.
Yeah, and he was president. Even after he left as CEO, I believe he was still on the board as like president and director. So would have had to have intimate knowledge of everything going on. In an aspect of the bank claims, BANQ claims as well, is that he didn't only bring over proprietary information and technology, but he also illegally transferred funds of bank clients to Fortress as well.
And there's missing funds.
Yeah,
So
it stinks.
So long story long, if you are relying on Fortress Trust right now, you're a fucking idiot. I think that much is clear. I think the Prime Trust hole is actually bigger than they make it seem to be, because they say they still have $80 million in assets, but it appears that the majority is this shitcoin that's called Audio that I've never heard of. Presumably has something to do with music on the blockchain. And that's completely illiquid. There's no way they're going to be able to sell that for $80 million. It's already worth less because the market immediately reacted. But yeah, so we basically had a bunch of companies that were relying on a bunch of like brokerage services and whatnot that were relying on Prime Trust, who were then relying on Fireblocks. And Prime Trust also was relying on like 5 different banks. So it's just third-party custodian, like third-party, trusted third parties all the way down. They're all security holes compounding on top of each other. And there was massive centralized points of failure all throughout the stack. And we're seeing the end result of that now. And this is why it's incredibly important for, first and foremost, for every Bitcoiner to learn how to self-custody. It's not as difficult as you think it is. Hold your own Bitcoin, hold it offline, learn how to do it, get comfortable with it. Then nobody can rug you, period. And second of all, if you're running a Bitcoin company in the space, to control your own infrastructure and control your own destiny. So if anyone rugs your customers, at least it's you.
Completely agree. And to add to this too, it's like going back to what happened. There's a couple of really big glaring issues, both on behalf of Prime Trust and Fireblocks. So, like, how are, number one, Prime Trust, even if you did do like a security setup transfer from an in-house solution to Fireblocks, like, why would you burn the private key that gave you access to those wallets? Like, this is where the story doesn't add up, because even if you did make that transition, there's a possibility of a client not realizing you made the transition and depositing Bitcoin to an address they previously used, in which case you would want to have access to that private key to make sure that you could right the wrong. And then number two, on Fireblocks' part, like, if this situation where Prime Trust was a client of Fireblocks and they were accidentally sending Bitcoin to legacy addresses that they previously controlled, like, Fireblocks as a counterparty in that interaction, that business, that B2B relationship, if that was going on for long enough, wouldn't they be able to raise their hand and say, hey, like, we haven't seen any deposits from you guys, or the amount that we expect to be getting into the wallets that you have with us? Like, what's going on? Like, shouldn't they have seen some things that would seem suspicious on their end?
Yeah, the whole thing fucking stinks, Marty. The whole thing fucking reeks.
Yeah, it reeks bad. Yeah, you don't burn private keys. And then, like, Fireblocks, I wonder, because that's something that really hasn't been discussed or talked about, at least I haven't seen it. Like, how did they not know that this was happening? It's either a sign of incompetence or lack of focus or attention to detail in their business relationships, or there's something fishier going on.
Yeah. No, I mean, the whole thing's incredibly fucked up.
Yeah. So going back to repercussions, I mean, again, like Matt said, if you're leveraging Fortress now, it's probably not a good idea. You probably want to begin transitioning away from them. Again, I see a bunch of people in the comments.
Horrible fucking idea.
Yeah. A bunch of people in the comments mentioning Swan. Yes, Swan has transitioned the US dollar side of their business over to Fortress. The Bitcoin side is handled by BitGo, from my understanding. So there's half exposure there. But still, yeah, anybody using Fortress right now should probably be trying to get off as quickly as possible, because you have to imagine that Scott Purcell, who is the founder of Fortress and is going to be heavily embroiled in the investigations stemming from Prime Trust, you have to imagine that's going to significantly hinder Fortress's business, which I think you also have to assume is run a bit fraudulently as well.
Yeah, I mean, the risk is less so with Fortress right now. I mean, there's always a rug risk, but the risk is less so a rug risk and more so like regulators might just shut down that business at any moment.
Yeah. And so
Specifically because I don't know. I mean, if you're storing Bitcoin with them, then there's a rug risk because Bitcoin's the most ruggable asset. But if you're using them for the fiat side, it's more of a denial of service type of situation.
yeah, funds can get frozen, and likely will, if we're being honest. Yeah, and it's also
And by
fishy
the
because it begs
way,
more
Prime
questions
Trust
too.
was a qualified
Qualified
custodian.
custodian.
Just
But how are you able to keep that qualified custodian designation if you're allocating your custody setup to another company? Is Fireblocks a qualified custodian too?
dude, the whole thing is just fucking fiat bullshit. The whole qualified
Bet.
be
You
your
know I
own
agree with this.
custodian.
We're trying to
Every
walk through this. You know I agree with you.
every Bitcoiner has the ability to have a qualified custodian in their pocket. Why are you relying on the fiat bullshit?
Yeah, that was a great tweet from Phil Geiger this week. You can be your own qualified custodian. It's
Yeah, and also I mean, Leishman made a good point though. I mean, I think anyone who's advocating for more regulation here, I mean, I think this proves that the regulation does not protect anybody. And the big concern is if we have people in this space that are advocating for more regulation, that the only people that can custody Bitcoin is like these qualified custodians, then we just have massive central points of failure with just like a few trust organizations that are blessed that still might commit fraud, rather than a bunch of different companies that have their own reputation at stake and are holding their own infrastructure and working with their customers directly, which is what we really want. We want everyone to hold their own keys, period. But companies should be encouraged to control their own infrastructure, control their own destiny, and manage that relationship with their customers directly in a proper free market of ideas and products.
Yeah, because the truth of the situation is that the legal and regulatory structure is simply not up with the times when it comes to Bitcoin security. And like Matt said, if you do have overregulation that tries to funnel Bitcoin custody into the hands of a select few quote unquote qualified custodians, which are proving not to be particularly qualified to custody Bitcoin in the case of Prime Trust. Exactly. But it gets to a point too, like we talk about Bitcoin's network distribution works in fractals. Obviously, you have the node topology. You want a decentralized network of full nodes around the world. You want decentralized network of hash rate around the world. That's true for private keys too. You want decentralized private keys. And like Matt said, like Bitcoin as a network, as an ecosystem, is much more robust if you have a distributed network of companies that manage their own infrastructure and their own private keys set up instead of allocating that to a select few. Obviously, we should note, like even in that setup, there are companies and custodians that can mess up their private key setup and rug their customers, but it'll be isolated to their customer base. And just imagine if somebody like a Fireblocks or a BitGo, like people are forced to use them, and God forbid they have something go wrong with their setup. Like, it could be terrible for the market overall.
Yeah, just hold your own keys, freaks. Become unruggable.
Best way to not get rugged is to be under the rug. That's holding your own keys. But yeah, fallout from this, Coinbits, which was a DCA app in the Bitcoin. They've come out via email, via their blog, and via Twitter yesterday, essentially saying that they've been caught up in this and don't have any recourse available to them at the moment. So they're on pause, and their customers are affected. Trying to think of who else got caught up in this. I mean, Binance US was using them. I'm not sure if they got off, but
Yeah, I don't
do you not
know.
want to talk
I don't
about
know
this?
who
Are you
else.
tired?
No, I just don't know who else the creditors are in this situation. I mean, I assume there was a bunch of small services. Like, I wasn't really familiar with Coinbits that got caught up in it. I mean, there is $150 million in liabilities, so there's presumably a decent amount of creditors. Obviously, there was a bank run on Prime Trust in the lead up to this. They had significantly more assets under their custodianship, even just 3 months ago. There's a lot of speculation that there's going to be clawbacks. I do not expect clawbacks. Not a lawyer, but do not expect any kind of clawbacks, especially if you withdrew yourself and you were using one of these services and you're holding in your self-custody. But it should be interesting to see how it all plays out. And I would just say, now more than ever, if you are running a Bitcoin company, your number one priority should be controlling your own infrastructure and controlling your own destiny. And if you are an individual Bitcoiner, your number one priority should be learning how to use Bitcoin and how to hold it yourself. It's not as difficult as you think it is. Life is fucking complicated. When humans need to find a way, we find a way. Most people have figured out how to drive a car. Every mother in the world has figured out how to raise a kid. Y'all can learn how to hold Bitcoin. We will make it easier. The tools will get better. There are many of us focused on it. But in the meantime, it is easier than you think it is. You just have to realize the need. Stop getting rugged and hold your own keys.
Yeah, and to that point of things getting easier, if you're a company who does not own your infrastructure stack, it's never been easier to do it thanks to companies like Cash App, Unchained, River, Galoy, Strike to an extent with Zap, that have open sourced their stacks and their wallet infrastructure and their node infrastructure. And so you do have the shoulders of giants that you can stand on, sort of see what they've built out in the open and incorporate that into your business.
Well, I mean, I mean, I think that's a good point. A lot of companies have tread before, so you can learn from their mistakes and what they've learned in general, because a lot of them have been very open about it. But also,
And
you know,
leverage
a
what they've
company like
built. They have a
BitGo.
lot of open source. They have a lot of open source projects that you can use.
Yeah, but where I was going with this is, most people aren't familiar. Is BitGo has two products. BitGo has a product that they're the full custodian of, which is pretty questionable if a company uses that. But then BitGo also has a multi-institution, multi-sig, where they only hold one key. And the company involved holds the majority of keys, so they control their own destiny in that regard as well. So there's a lot of different paths you can take. But at the end of the day, basically what you should be asking yourself is, who can rug my customers? And if it's anyone besides yourself, you're playing with fucking fire.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the one rug you may not be able to protect you and your customers from is the U.S. dollar side of things, the banking relationships. But
Oh, you can't protect against that.
No, the very least you can protect yourself and your customers from Bitcoin custodians rugging.
You can have multiple banking relationships, which is good. Diversify your risk. But yeah, the fiat side, you're gonna always have risk there, and then also, like the government regulator side, like that. Those rugs are coming as well. Like all these regulated Bitcoin businesses, they're a couple corrupt regulators away from being put out of business at any moment.
Yes, but even with that, I mean, we had the example of BitMEX where that was the case, but because they own their own infrastructure and did a multi-jurisdiction, multi-sig, even as they were feeling the pressure of the U.S. government and embroiled in litigation, they were able to process withdrawals because of the way in which they set up their multi-sig.
But they had no fiat.
No fiat, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that, I mean, BitMEX, stand by this, I think still to this day, the best Bitcoin native product that's ever been created since Bitcoin launched. The way they did it, I mean, it proved they were all going to jail and they were still able to get their clients their Bitcoin because of the way they set up their multi-sig.
If you put the word financial there, I'd probably agree with you. Like a exchange
Financial
product or something. Financial product. There's a lot of great Bitcoin products that have been released.
Yeah. Bitcoin
at the end of the day, BitMEX was mostly a casino.
Yes.
They made a very robust censorship resistant casino on the back of Bitcoin.
But it also allowed, I mean, BitMEX, yes, it was predominantly, overwhelmingly leveraged as a casino where you send your Bitcoin and it gets burned on leverage. But it also provided a lot of value for a lot of people who were looking for like synthetic stable coins, essentially, where they would be living under a Bitcoin standard and needed some stability in terms of US dollar value of their Bitcoin, and they would take commensurate short positions on BitMEX to hold that value in. Predominantly casino, but did have other benefits as well.
Yeah, you could do just a 1x short, and you basically have synthetic dollar exposure, but you'd have massive custodial risk.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, thinking adversarially about this, and it's something we've said on the show, and what you just mentioned with BitGo, I do think on the other side of this cycle, multi-institution, multi-sig will be the standard, or should be the standard. Whether or not it will be is another question. But I think with everything going on right now, it's becoming glaringly obvious that it is a superior model if you're going to be interacting with custodians that handle your Bitcoin. But taking that further, like you should have multi-institutions spread across multi-jurisdictions if you really want to be as robust as possible.
The 100%. I mean, it doesn't really help you that much otherwise.
Yeah. All right.
It helps.
Next up on the list. Yeah. Next up on the list, Riot just signed a massive deal with MicroBT. They're not only going to be buying a massive amount of their ASICs, their WhatsMiner ASICs, 33,280, which will increase their self-mining capacity to over 20 exahash, which is pretty massive. They have the ability to purchase up to 66,560 additional miners as well with that agreement. But on top of that, they're really going to push forward the manufacturing of the WhatsMiners in the U.S., which is pretty big. That's been a big thing in the mining industry, is the risk that exists with all the ASICs being produced in Southeast Asia, predominantly China, Malaysia, Thailand, and the somewhat loose, more direct connections with China A lot of miners have to get creative when they purchase their ASICs to get them in the States without touching China, so they don't have to pay the tariffs. And so the ability to have the ASICs manufactured here in the US will completely prevent them from having to worry about that. So it's a pretty big deal. One for Riot, which has predominantly been Bitmain heavy to date, seeing them diversify their ASIC fleets into what's miners is a pretty big development for them as a company, and then just overall for the mining industry here in the United States, having MicroBT manufacture some of their machines in the US is pretty massive.
Nailed it.
Yeah. And that's like, I think it's been little known. I mean, I wrote about it last year, but MicroBT has been manufacturing machines here in the US. Kevin Zong from Foundry really drove that effort and got it started last year, I believe. But I think Riot throwing their weight behind it will ensure that manufacturing facility is able to stay up and running and service clients in the US. Are you looking at the comments?
Yeah, I'm sorry. BTC Pay server represent.
Okay. And a thing to note here too with the manufacturing in the US, I think it's like a technicality. It is technically manufactured in the US, but still the chips, the hash boards, I think everything.
I was wondering about that. I was going to ask you, do they like ship it here and just assemble it here?
Yeah, I think it's literally just assembled here. I could be wrong, and I do think I am wrong now that I think about some of the videos that Kevin shared in the past, where it does seem like there is some like printout of hash boards at least, but the chips will still be manufactured in South Korea, where Samsung operates.
Got it. Well, a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Gradually, then suddenly.
Reshore. And yeah, like we said, we had a negative 3.3%.
We can hear you typing. When you like mash on your keys, it sounds like, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just command tabbing to the list so I can see it.
Be aware, freak.
Yeah. The one thing I was going to add there is negative 3.3% difficulty adjustment. We touched on it last week, but it seems that demand response in Texas certainly did affect hash rate and led to that lower difficulty adjustment. And that'll be interesting to follow this summer. It seems like it's going to be a really hot summer in Texas. Have you read up on the transition from La Nina to El Nino that is causing these weather occurrences in the U.S.?
No. You want to...
Yeah, apparently.
You want to let us know?
We do know that I did take one meteorology class in college. I don't know if we covered La Nina versus El Nino, but apparently we're transitioning into El Nino. No, we're transitioning into El Nino, apparently, which is driving a lot of moisture up from the Gulf, which is making it very humid in Texas, in that part of the country, and then a bit arid up here in the Northeast. Apparently, it's just going to be really hot and humid in Texas because of this, dry and cooler in other parts of the country. And apparently we're going to have a pretty crazy hurricane season this year because of this.
Be aware, freaks.
These waves are on the way. Anything else to add on the mining?
No, I mean, I just props to the Riot team. They're fucking crushing it.
Yeah. Always crushing it. They got their Corsicana site in there too. I think that's actually where a lot of these ASICs will end up. They're building that gigawatt facility out in Corsicana in Texas. And I believe they they're not going to build out 1 gigawatt and then plug in. They'll build out chunks and then plug in as they go. And so I think this first tranche will be going to the first build out of Corsicana.
I don't know
Sorry,
where that is.
Smashing the keyboard. It's like northwest of Austin, I believe.
Got it. Yeah, no, I mean, they just keep stacking and keep building, and it should pay significant dividends to them in the bull market, especially since mempools will never clear again.
Well, if El Nino has its way, it will definitely prevent blocks from clearing as quickly as I'd like.
Marty's already setting up his excuses. Now he's got meteorology excuses. Mempools would have cleared if it wasn't for the damn El Nino.
Spiral grants. 2 new spiral grants, or 1 new, 1 renewal. Matthew Ramsden.
And there's another one on the list right afterwards. So we got 3 spiral grants.
3 grants. 1 new, 2 renewals. Matthew Ramsden, who I have to say has one hell of a golf swing. He was in my foursome at the first ever Bitcoin Park. What are we calling that? Golf outing?
The
golf
Bitcoin
tournament?
Park Golf Classic.
The Golf Classic. Matthew is in my foursome. Dude can drive the ball. He can also contribute to Lightning. So he got a spiral grant to work on LDK and BDK, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Or LDK specifically.
I thought his major focus was on the BDK side.
Matthew's also planning to work on LDK node, Bitcoin Dev Kit scripts, Bitcoin Dev Kit
See, there you go.
Fine rigs.
Well, so
wallet UI.
Matt is fucking awesome. He runs our bit devs here at Bitcoin Park in Nashville. He runs our monthly bit devs along with Steve Myers and P. And both him and Steve, Steve has been focused on the BDK project. But yeah, I'm very grateful to have them both in Nashville running our bit devs and as members of Bitcoin Park, and very grateful for them working on Bitcoin. And I'm grateful for Spiral for funding them. Obviously, Pavel Nex is a good friend of the pod. He's mostly been focused recently on Stratum V2, but he's also one of the legends behind BTC Pay Server. And he has his own Bitcoin local community space in Belgrade. So huge props to him. That's incredibly well deserved. And then the third one is a renewal for Thunder Biscuit, who I had the fortune to meet this year. And he's been focused on BDK, and he's just another fucking legend. So just really great to see across the board. And I'm glad they're getting supported for their open source work. BDK, LDK. The LDK node is basically this idea of LDK is more building blocks for people to make Lightning wallets, and so is BDK. And LDK node is like just you take BDK and LDK and you have it in a pre-built default configuration that makes it even easier to build apps. So the work that everyone is doing that is contributing to BDK and LDK is basically doing all of the hard stuff, doing all of the extremely hard, very security focused aspects of Bitcoin wallets and different tools. So then other people can build on top of it, and we can have a very diverse ecosystem of different options available to Bitcoiners, which is exactly what we want to see. Options are good. The more options, the better, with many different trade-off balances, so people can choose which tool is best for their situation.
Yeah. And if you talk with some of the devs who are on the cutting edge of Lightning development that are somewhat agnostic to the implementations that are used, a lot of them are saying LDK is really superior. I'll just put it bluntly, just to how modular it is, and the fact that it was built in Rust. Apparently, building on LDK allows you to create really unique experiences that just aren't possible on clients or implementations like LND or Core Lightning, because they sort of lock you into operating in a particular fashion, where LDK's modularity allows you to get more creative with implementation and app design.
Yeah, but the irony of that is, like, that's part of the reason why LDK adoption has been slow, which is why LDK Node is coming out, so that you have less modularity and just easier to work with. But that it just means not only do users have options, but devs have options, right?
Yeah.
The more options, the better. Mutiny is completely built on the LDK BDK stack. And the gents over at Mutiny rave about it, so it makes their project possible.
What's the room looking like, or what's the capacity looking like for the Lightning Summit next month? Is it sold out, or is there still room to get in there if you want to?
There's still some room. The guest list is fucking stacked. If you're interested in joining us, it's bitcoinpark.com/lightning23. I released a preliminary teaser schedule that I should have put in our group chat, but I did not. But that's on my Twitter. But yeah, the guest list is absolutely stacked. We're targeting probably a little bit over 200 people. It's going to be very intimate. Contrary to what the blue checks have gotten used to, is there's no VIPs at the park. Everyone's a VIP. There's not 2 tiers of tickets. It's just a single ticket. Lunch is included on both days. Breakfast is included on both days. Full days of content on both July 13th and July 14th. We are grateful to have Nifty Nay come in, Lisa, to run her base 58 course in the beginning of the week. Then we're going to have then we're going to have BitDevs on Tuesday the 11th, open to the public, free, as always. And like I said, that's run by Matthew P. and Steve Myers. And then right after that, on the 11th, is going to be What Bitcoin Did Live. Then on the 12th, we're going to have our open house social. That's also going to be Lightning focused, free, open to the public. Expecting maybe 250 people to that. And then the 13th and the 14th will be the Lightning Summit, 2 full days of high signal Lightning content and discussion. And one thing we do with the park, which is interesting, is no photos, no videos. All the panels, all the content is recorded, audio only. Now, panelists have the choice if they want that to be published to the Bitcoin Park podcast feed. Some panelists have already opted out of it ahead of time. I expect a decent amount to opt out of it after the fact. And that is beautiful, because the type of discussion that I want to foster at the park, that we want to foster at the park, is the type of conversation that you might not hear anywhere else. It's not the same old bullshit. It's things that people want to talk about in person, off the record. So you have to show the proof of work and come join us in Nashville. So I hope to meet a bunch of freaks there. I will have both. I will have these no blue check hats at the park. I will be verifying if you have a blue check, and if you don't have a blue check, you are welcome to a hat, but you have to come in person and shake my hand. I will obviously also have still dispatch hats. And for Rob Hamilton, who's not listening right now, because I don't see him in the live chat, I did place an order for the Bitcoin Park members hats. So Bitcoin Park members can walk away with their membership hat.
And one other small little event that will be going on during that week is Thursday night, the 13th. Us blue checks, we're going to steal all the hats that you you unverified freaks get. We're going to have a hat burning ceremony, to
Um,
a hat sacrifice to the WEF gods.
wow, noted. We will prepare for that. But there will also be obviously an in-person rabbit hole recap. We won't have a live audience for that, but it will be a party rip in 2 weeks. And as me and Marty always do for our party rips, we will not figure out who's going to join us for the party rip until about 15 minutes before the party rip. So hopefully we have a bunch of ride or die freaks there, and it's not, way too oversaturated with blue checks.
I mean, sometimes it's not even 15 minutes before. Sometimes it's 15 minutes into the party rip. We'll call somebody down who's at the park. They'll come join us.
It's true. It's true.
Joshua,
but
how
yeah,
does one
no,
become a ride or die freak?
Yeah, resist
If
the
you're in the
check.
comments right now, you don't have to resist the check. We
Resist
love our
the
checks
check.
and our non-checks.
Fuck the checks. The checks hate you.
Joshua,
Demons.
I don't hate you, Joshua. If you're in the live chat, you're ride or die. And I don't think that's the only
yeah,
way to
there's
become
not
a
a
ride or die freak.
there's not a particular formula. I mean, you can ask Carlos because mid-episode he's become non-ride or die and then become ride or die again. So it changes, it fluctuates. But yeah, ride or die freaks is more of a lifestyle. There's no rule book there. But all jokes aside, you should consider coming out and joining us for the Lightning Summit for the whole week. Come out for the whole week. We have a Marriott that's 2 blocks away. A lot of people are staying there. There's discounted rates. We got a discounted rate block. We're an easy drive from a lot of places in America. The airport is very convenient if you're flying in, and cheap. So come visit us. July 13th, July 14th. Come for the whole fucking week. BitcoinPark.com/lightning23.
It's always a long week. Pace yourselves, freaks. Pace yourselves. Advice from a Nashville Summit veteran here. Next up on the list is EBD. Launched time-based Bitcoin rewards for over 100 Android games. I didn't see this until you put it on the list. This seems pretty cool, though.
I also didn't see it until I put it on the list. I mean, look, this is. I think this is the thesis, right? We're kind of watching the transition from Bitcoin specific games to every game having Bitcoin involved. And I think the starting point is almost these wrappers on top of already existing popular games. But eventually we're going to get to the point where sorry. Eventually we're going to get to the point where every game has Bitcoin in it. I'm just laughing because Carlos is asking if I get kickbacks from the airport. He does show it a lot. Marty and I had to deal with tri-state New York airports for fucking years.
I got a story. I had to deal with it yesterday. I got a story when you're done.
It is hard for me to make it. It's hard for me to overstate what a fucking joy it is to fly into the humble Nashville airport or pick up someone from that airport. It is so much fucking easier. So unfortunately, I do not get a kickback yet. But if you are listening, Nashville airport operator, first of all, we would love to have you on the pod. And second of all, sponsorship opportunities are open.
I'll show an airport if I have to. I'm in. Speaking of New York area airports, we typically fly into Newark when we come in from Austin, even though we're from Philly, just because it's like literally a third of the cost to get the whole family home from Austin to Newark instead of Austin to Philly. And so we flew in yesterday and it was going swimmingly. We got in onto the plane on time, left a little bit early. Everybody got on the plane in a timely manner. We landed in Newark 30 minutes early, and we sat on the tarmac for 2 hours with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. That is not ideal. And we were literally just standing, like, parked, looking at the gates. And apparently there was backups.
That's brutal.
There was like flight delays at Newark, and the planes were just sitting there for like 2 hours waiting to eventually board to leave. And it's like, how do you not just let one pull out, have us pull up, deboard, pull out, pull in? Like,
It's
it was a
fucking
whole goddamn
infuriating.
process. Literally infuriating. And we took an afternoon flight, like thinking we'd get down here in time for bedtime. So obviously we're at the Jersey Shore. And then we had, not only did we wait on the tarmac for 2 hours, we had to drive 2 hours after that. So it was turned into like a literal 8 hours of travel, 2 of which were just being stuck in purgatory on the tarmac.
Yeah. So anyway, the Nashville airport's great. Consider visiting.
So
us
is the Austin airport. Austin airport's great too. This was like, you go from the incredible experience of the Austin airport, flying through security with 2 kids in 10 minutes, to waiting on the tarmac and then trying to wade through the chaos that was Newark Airport last night.
Well,
but
I'm sorry you
Chester-
had to go through that, Marty.
Yeah, or no, Norwell talk. I mean,
Every-
this, and on a more
Marty got
serious
rugged
note,
by
though,
an airport. Airports do the
Yeah,
most
I
ruggings.
Well, I think like to like drive this like a serious conversation too. I think it's emblematic of like the decay caused by the fiat system, like decay in quality of services. Like, once you get to this point where you're completely subsidized by the government, essentially, which the airlines proved to be after the lockdowns and the bailouts that they got during that, like there's no incentive to provide a really good service, like, if you're an airline or an airport.
Yeah, it's over regulation and broken incentives. There's no free market. There's no real competition that's happening. There's a disconnect between the end customer and the actual provider of the services. And there's some Bitcoiners that want to see Bitcoin end up that way, and I am not one of them.
Neither am I. But again, it gets to a scary level too, because I'm sure you've seen videos of it too. You had that emergency landing the other day because the nose of the plane malfunctioned. You had a video going around Twitter of like the engine of a plane like sparking up, like it was obviously breaking. That's one thing many people don't realize when they fly, is like a lot of the fleet of airplanes like over 30 years old, and due to the incentive structure that's been erected in the fiat system, people really aren't incentivized to go learn how to be an aerospace engineer. They'd rather go work on Wall Street. And you have this growing problem of technical debt across the economy, not only in the airline industry. We saw a bridge fall in Montana a couple weeks ago, but like, this is like a serious, I know you're going to say mandibles, but like, this is a true mandibles situation where,
You haven't even read the fucking book.
but I know, am I right?
Yeah, this is madness.
I've read the book. You've read it to me, essentially. But it is...
You're living the book.
Yeah.
We're all living the book.
The growing technical and expertise debt that is building in this country is scary, like to the point where, like, you talk to Parker, like, is making an effort to fly as little as possible because he thinks this is like an actual crisis that's going to continue to grow. It's like planes are just going to fall out of the sky. We're going to have like more emergency landings and shit like that.
Oh, that's why I want an airship. We have a freak negging us that we don't fly. He's asking why we fly scheduled, and he's negging us for not flying private. But I just want to skip that step and get my own airship. I feel like that would be badass.
Yeah, we were promised flying cars, and we've gotten planes falling out of the sky. This is your
I would just say that there are concerns there in terms of broken incentives And flying is fucking infuriating. It brings out the worst in everybody. It's just gotten so much worse over the last. I mean, even if you watch any kind of movies or anything from pre 9/11 days, it's just gotten significantly worse. They added the whole TSA element and all that bullshit. But I do wonder how much of like that aging fleet stuff is fear porn, because I mean, if you look at it statistics wise, we do a lot of things that are considerably more unsafe than flying in planes.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
And I would say that, you know, part of the blue check program is to control the influencers so you can control the discourse. And Twitter is quickly morphing into an Elon psyop machine. So be careful, you know, just modeling whatever news cycle you're deciding to care about this week is based on whatever blue check tweet threads are in your feed.
That's a very good point. I saw you reply guy him with his psyop machine. What did you memed him, or did you? He sent,
no,
yeah,
I just congratulated him. I congratulated him because he was super excited about the Russian insurrection, you know, the Russian coup. He was trying to get as many people talking about it as possible. And then the next day he just tried to pass it off. He's like, "Oh, there's psyops everywhere." It's like, yeah, dude. Like, that was completely manufactured by the Twitterati and the blue checks. And he supported all of it because it's good for business. It's really good for business.
I will concede
psyops
that
are
is
literally
true.
his business model. It's a key aspect of his business model. And I would say, you know, all jokes aside, under the last Twitter leadership, there were significant concerns over shadow banning, and a lot of people spoke up about it, including myself, and I was shadow banned. But now anyone who doesn't verify their identity is de facto shadow banned, and the blue checks are silent because they're in on it. So fuck you.
I don't want you to be shadow banned. All you have to do is pay the $8 a month. You're not shadow banned anymore.
It's not the payment, Marty. It's the identity verification.
I know. No, and you
I
actually
will
brought
not
up a
be
good point this week,
gaslit by a blue check.
I'm just trying to give you props here. You brought up a good point this week too. I think somebody mentioned it to you, and then you elaborate on it, which is a lot of the bots are getting blue checks now, which is the gateway to, like, you don't want the bots that's getting blue checked. You need to send us your ID to make sure that you're an actual human.
Yeah, and then eventually, I mean, they're gonna use fake IDs. They're gonna get around that process. So we got to scan the eyeballs, and then you know you might as well get the chip in your head that Elon's developing, the Neuralink.
Will you ever get the chip?
You're probably going to, so you can still post longer Twitter videos.
No, that's a step too far. Irises and chips in the brain, too far for me. It's not happening.
Noted. We'll see.
We got off track from Zebedee. I think you were making
Bitcoin in games. Billions of people are going to use Bitcoin in games. Period. Very bullish on Bitcoin in games. And we will have, not only will we have Bitcoin games that you can play with Lightning at the Lightning Summit, but we're going to have, great discussions about Bitcoin and gaming and Lightning and gaming at the summit too, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah. And I think an interesting thing to note with the Zebedee integration, so they have in the announcement, Zebedee app now offers a broader selection of playable games that include Bitcoin rewards thanks to a new partnership with advertising platform Adjo and its Playtime network. And so this is something that's been discussed in the context of podcasting 2.0, as well as, like, you're probably going to see advertising platforms implementing this, like just paying people sats for viewing the ads. Like, you're getting paid for your time. So maybe it makes these games more likely to be played because people are getting paid, but they're also getting served ads. It's not as transparent as some of the ideas that companies like Fountain are running with, where it's like, hey, play this audio clip of an ad and we'll pay you sats. It's more I don't know if subversive is the word, but it's less transparent in the sense that you're getting paid sats, but you're getting paid sats because they're going to stick an ad in front of you as you play that game.
Right. They're taking the ad revenue and giving you sats for it.
Yeah.
A small portion, so they can
Yeah.
still get their cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, my dream is, to blow off some steam, play a video game and have like a young kid in the Philippines like spawn camp me and just kill me and take my sats. And I just think that's the future. And like a million other people being able to bet on all that shit at the same time without permission. And I think we're going to get there eventually, but it's going to be it'll be a slow, steady process. But it will happen. It just makes sense. It makes too much sense to me. Playing poker without money fucking sucks. It's boring. Playing poker with money, it's a great experience. It's a great way to hang out with friends. It's fun. It's exciting. Same thing with games. We just it'll take a little time for basically the larger game publishers to start to figure it out. It's going to come from the challengers first, who need to have an edge for some reason or another.
Yeah. So shout out to Zebedee, companies like Thunder, really pushing this forward. Neil, Richard, and Adam at Dust Up. Seems like the gaming culture will be injected with sats. And another thing to note too, I'm sure you saw this, but the dude from Epic Games followed JB55 after
because
got
they're in war.
The Apple app.
They're in war against the App Store together. Maybe that means we're a little bit closer to Fortnite adding Bitcoin, which would be fucking dope. It's a perfect fit.
It really is.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, Epic Games has been fighting in the App Store over their 30% cut of in-app purchases, and he believes so strongly in it that not only did he pull Fortnite. Fortnite is available on every single platform, and it's a very unique game in that it's a AAA game. It's very high quality, fleshed out game that makes billions of dollars. It's available on every platform, and you can cross play across platforms. So it doesn't matter if you're on PC or Xbox or Switch or PlayStation, you can play with all your friends. But not if they have an Apple product. He didn't only pull it from iOS, he also pulled it from Macs. Even though on a Mac you can install without an app store, you're still able to install programs without an app store. Because he was so pissed off at Tim Apple, he just pulled it from all Apple products, period. So it's good to see a principal stand like that, even if he is a blue check.
Isn't JB55 a blue check too? Can we check that?
There's a lot of disappointments, Marty. There's a lot of disappointments. I mean, our good friend who I have there you go. Our good friend who I have so much respect for, Jason Rick, was like asking for my approval on Twitter because he's a blue check. And look, you're a brother. I have a ton of respect for you. Be better. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. They're trying to divide us. Don't let them divide us.
Resist You're the one doing all the dividing. You're doing the dividing.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
That's the Hegelian dialectic
coming the fucking in. Identity.
You're creating the problem. We're about to get to the software updates section of the show. So let's jump to the top 5 or top 4 Boostagrams from last episode 258. You can't trust Prime Trust. Becoming more obvious by the week. At Svainjal, 99,999 sats, 9s across the board. Palindrome boost. I already regret applying for a blue check. Big mistake. But Marty made me do it. Love you guys. I did not make you do it, Svainjal.
Take some personal responsibility, freak. Thanks for the support.
At Shania Twain. Shania is listening too. the podcast.
Wait, before you read that, Logan, are you the Logan in the live chat?
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm
Logan's
back around
both
Iris's
producing the
back
show
up.
and he's in the live chat. By the way, whoever asked earlier, that's what a ride or die freak looks like. Producing the show while in the live chat. Okay, let's hear from Shania.
Are you having fun in the live chat, Logan?
Whee!
Is it fun? Shania Twain, 71,369 sats. Derby, England is welcoming y'all to our new meetup. Matt and Marty, thanks for helping igniting small community fires all around the world. Despite all of our perceived differences, we are strong together, and that's how we win. Even blue checks. We are at BTC Derby on Twitter. Don't denigrate Shania Twain.
Thanks for your support, freak, and I'm glad. I'm the most bullish fundamental of Bitcoin is this grassroots community development. So, cheers to you for being a part of that movement.
Yeah, so if you're around Derby, England, and you're looking for a new meetup, a Bitcoin meetup, go follow at BTC Derby on Twitter, DERBY. Pronounced Darby.
It's apparently pronounced. There you go.
I don't know what you Brits and your English. You guys fucked up the English language. You may have created it, but actually, I don't even know if you guys created it.
Who created it then?
Did England create English? Did the English create English?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why it's called English.
Too. That's what I assumed.
What did I
just
fuck
wanted
up?
to make sure I was being.
Oh, they fucked it up.
Yeah, they fucked up. Like, it's spelled Derby.
I mean, look,
why is it pronounced
I
Darby?
can't pronounce things for shit. We're both not great pronunciationers, so.
You know,
Right,
Matt,
so
my
Darby
mom
England.
complains about the way that you pronounce important
Important.
and tells me that I should tell you that.
Also, especially.
No,
I hear that too. Well, I have to like think about it when I say it now. Well, whatever. Fuck you all. Stay humble, stack sats.
I do like the way you say important. Important.
Yeah, there's like a D in it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I take that back. Logan, tell your mother I appreciate her, and that I'm sorry about my poor pronunciation, and I'll work on it.
Listen, I'm getting roasted in the comments now for questioning whether or not English started in England. You know, it's a romantic language. There was a long history of going from Latin to the other Romance
I like
languages.
Luke T. Do the French speak French?
Yeah, obviously I know the English speak English, okay? Did they create the language? I'm assuming so. I just want it to be historically to speak Chinese in China. Well, Luck T, there's two. Is it Mandarin or Cantonese? Like, you have to ask these questions.
You almost forgot Cantonese.
I did almost forget Cantonese. Moving on.
Okay, next Boostagram.
Eric 99 here to save us.
Great advice.
50,000 sats. Stay humble, stack sats.
Thank you,
at
Eric.
Mr.
True ride or die freak.
At Mr. 13,337 sats. Blind boost. In parentheses, not listen, but I owe you. Boost until you bleed. Thank you, Mr. Blind boost. I like that.
I owe you a boost until you what?
He owes us. That was one sentence, and the next sentence is boost until you bleed. All caps, exclamation point.
Love it. All caps.
You don't need to bleed. You don't need to bleed, freaks, but a nice blood sacrifice to the show is always appreciated.
The support is appreciated, and it really does mean a lot seeing the sats come into our node, because it's more than just the money. It's
the signal.
It's about sending a message, and it shows it keeps us going. It just keeps us going week in and week out. That you guys find this content helpful and you're enjoying it, and thank you. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, I love you, freaks. And I was joking about the blood sacrifice. We don't appreciate that. It's weird, demonic, satanic. Keep your blood. No sacrifices. Back to the list. Software updates. this is one I'm excited about. Interested to hear your thoughts on this, considering what's happened in this space, Matt. Payjoin Dev Kit was released by Dan Gould. So Payjoin Development Kit, it's a full and completely standalone Payjoin implementation with supporting modules and enabling greater flexibility. So the idea, similar to BDK and LDK, which have dedicated development kits for Bitcoin wallets and LDK implementations. Dan has spun out Payjoin Development Kit to make it easier to implement Payjoin into Bitcoin wallet software projects. And I'm very excited about this. I've been saying it for a long time on the show. I think the normalization of Payjoin in everyday spending will do a lot to improve the privacy assurances that Bitcoiners have as they're sending and receiving Bitcoin throughout time. Interesting thing with Payjoin Development Kit, and something that Dan has gone to the Bitcoin Dev mailing list with, is an attempt to solve one of the biggest problems with Payjoin historically, which has been the idea that you need an always-on server, an always-on hot wallet that is able to provide an input for a Payjoin transaction. If you're receiving Bitcoin, that is what I would argue has probably prevented adoption up to this point. It seems that Dan has found a way to do this with a serverless asynchronous Payjoin, where you'll essentially be able to do a Payjoin without having an always-on server. You'll be able to allocate sort of the construction of the PSBT.
It's like a relay, right? Isn't it someone else's server?
Yeah, you're using somebody else's server. Somebody else has like a server on that you connect with and have an endpoint. So what are your thoughts on this? Is Payjoin ever gonna?
So he hasn't really removed the need for interactivity. He just kind of made it an interoperable server standard or something, kind of like Nostr.
Yes. And they're using I believe Turn servers. I believe they're called TURN.
But he called it that, right?
I don't know. I think it might be. I don't think he did. I've read the mailing list. It seems like it's something that's already leveraged by other things.
I mean, look, I think it would be great to see more Payjoin adoption. So one of the common ways that surveillance companies track our Bitcoin transactions is they operate under the assumption that when you send a Bitcoin transaction, it's really a combination of input and outputs. So you take a bunch of unspent Bitcoin transactions that are inputs from your wallet, and those get combined together. And then you have, usually in a typical Bitcoin transaction, you'll have two outputs. You'll have one output is the person you're paying, and then the other output's your change coming back to you. So with a Payjoin, so one of the heuristics that the surveillance companies use is they just assume that all the inputs belong to the same person, which is the sender. And what a Payjoin does is you're essentially, the receiver is giving an input as well. So the receiver and the sender put an input in. And as a result, it breaks that heuristic if a lot of people start using it, where you get to a point where surveillance companies can't just assume that all the inputs are with the sender. I do agree that the single biggest hurdle has been that the receiver has need to be online or like in person with you. You know, Samurai Wallet on mobile has the in-person Payjoins. They call them stowaway, where you essentially, you're there with a person and of course you're paying them so they can pass that information back and forth, because you have to construct that transaction together. We've talked about on the show previously is that BTC Pay Server has a Payjoin feature, because the BTC Pay Server is already online all the time, right? So you're paying a merchant on BTC Pay Server. You want to buy a T-shirt, you want to buy ammo. They can handle that back and forth, that information transfer, because they're online anyway. Now, I would say, but the caveat there is that if you pay with Lightning, you actually have decent privacy from the receiver. who is, in most situations, if you're buying something online, should be part of your threat model, right? Like, you don't want the person who's receiving money from you to be able to track your transactions and know how much Bitcoin you have. So I think it's kind of been this weird situation where if you're paying a merchant, maybe most people that care about privacy would be more likely to just pay with Lightning when that's supported. But this is interesting because if we get more mobile wallets to support it, if we get more wallets in general to support it, maybe when average people pay each other, they'll pay with Payjoins for improved privacy. But there are trade-offs. The main trade-off is the transaction is going to cost you more money. The second trade-off is most surveillance companies are just going to assume that both inputs are from the same person. So you're kind of taking on that kind of liability from whoever you're paying with, right? Marty goes online and pays for illegal porn. And then I try and pay Marty, and Marty gives me one of his inputs in a Payjoin. Then the surveillance company might just assume that I was the one who bought illegal porn, even though it was Marty. So you have that as an adoption issue. And there's kind of like a threshold that we have to hit that is not an objective threshold. It's like if we hit 5% or 10%, maybe the surveillance companies will stop considering all inputs as belonging to the sender. So you don't have this immediate gain that you get from CoinJoin or Lightning. But regardless, these kind of building blocks in general are really great to see because, once again, it gives users more options. It gives devs more options first, and then it gives the users of whatever the devs are building more options. And anything that improves transactional privacy on Bitcoin is a win to me.
Yeah, and tell I'm a little distracted here because I believe, I forget where it is, to the point you made about these transactions being more expensive, I think he did find out a way to make it less expensive. I'm looking for it in the
But it's always going to be
right
more expensive because you automatically have more inputs. And the way transaction fees are dictated are by the number of inputs is one of the key elements. The more inputs you have, the bigger the transaction, the higher the transaction fee.
So just to run with this, we can poke holes in it. PDK began as a Rust Payjoin side project library developed by Martin Habostiak at Kixonil in 2021. Up until then, Payjoin had been cast as a merchant/client privacy tool, but Martin saw Payjoin as something more. He showcased Payjoin as a generic interactive transaction coordination early on. One of Martin's Rust Payjoin applications, Loptos, receives Payjoin to open batches of Lightning channels from an external Payjoin sender, reducing fees and eliminating one whole transaction from typical channel funding flow. So that's what I saw in terms of batching.
But that's for Lightning.
Opens. Yeah, so you could use it to batch channel opens on Lightning. Yeah, no. Reduce fees that way.
Payjoin makes a lot of sense for Lightning channel opens, and that might be where we see the majority of adoption happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you be willing to pay more, knowing that you have the privacy? Obviously, if we're pumping CoinJoin in general.
I mean, you're paying more to use CoinJoin, but with CoinJoin you have it's very measurable privacy gains you get. With Payjoin, it's not so much. It's a little bit more nuanced. For Lightning channel opens, yeah, like I'd pay a little bit more for a more private Lightning channel open.
Well, you'd actually pay less if you can batch them.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely pay less. I mean, there's a strong incentive. Well, then, but like if I can, I would rather, like, if something requires privacy that I'm purchasing, I would like to pay with the Lightning self-custody wallet, because then the receiver has no idea what UTXO funded that transaction, and there's zero link on chain. So, I mean, in that situation, I would rather, if given the option between paying with Lightning or Payjoin, it makes way more sense to pay with Lightning.
Yeah. think something we say here often applies here too. Optionality is good. So I think the more optionality, the better.
Yeah.
And then you
But
may have
this is
mentioned it when
great.
I was looking for that stat. Like, what are your thoughts on the fact that you don't need equal inputs for Payjoin? You can break the common input ownership heuristic with unequal inputs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't need equal inputs. But I will say, like, look, like this is where to me it doesn't obviate CoinJoin. It's just another tool.
Yeah.
It has different trade-offs. But here's the thing, right? Is like if person A's UTXOs are all doxed to a KYC entity that's keeping records, and then person B's UTXOs are all doxed to a KYC entity's records. And that those KYC entities are both sharing with the same surveillance company or the same government that's sharing with the same surveillance company. Then, like, you could be doing a Payjoin, and they're just like looking at the chain. They're like, "Oh, look how cute that is. Marty's doing a Payjoin with Matt. We have all their UTXOs known. You did nothing, and you thought you might have done something."
But they still,
So
in this case, they still wouldn't know where. They'd know it's one of two. They wouldn't know who owns what UTXO. And then as soon as you step outside of that
they wouldn't know.
surveillance
They wouldn't know if I paid you. They wouldn't know if I paid you or you paid me. But they would know that a transaction happened between the two of us.
Yes, they wouldn't know who paid who, and they wouldn't know who owns what UTXO after the case. It just
right, unless
guess one of two.
Unless you know you fucked up your privacy in the future and then combined that UTXO with another UTXO that's doxed and known to you, and didn't use a Payjoin, and then I wouldn't have any idea if you did that or not, unless I was like actively watching your coin history.
Yeah. Good point. I think the overarching point of all this discussion is in the wake of everybody getting all horny for number go up because of BlackRock and others filing ETFs. It should be known and well understood that Bitcoin's privacy assurances are suboptimal right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. Look, I really like the idea of Payjoins for Lightning channel opens, particularly if you save money. That's a really strong incentive. It's hard. A lot of people will pay more for additional privacy, and then there's the majority of people just don't give a shit. Period. But a lot of people, even like the most amount of people, care about saving money. So if we're in a high fee environment and people can save money and have a better privacy outcome for everybody, that's a massive win. But I will say, in the Payjoin CoinJoin argument, it often comes down to the fact that CoinJoins are very obvious on chain because you have the equal inputs. You have the equal outputs where they're the same amount. I don't really think that is necessarily. I think that's a feature, not a bug. If you use message encryption, everyone that's snooping on your message traffic knows you're sending a message to someone encrypted. They don't know what you're saying. They don't know what's in the message, but they know you're sending an encrypted message. It's the same situation with CoinJoin. They know you're doing a CoinJoin, but they don't necessarily know, they can't track those transactions going forward. It's very difficult for them to track those transactions going forward. So I don't know if it's necessarily the biggest negative of CoinJoin. I think the biggest negative of CoinJoin historically has been cost and difficulty. It's just not very convenient. It's not as convenient as sending a naive Bitcoin transaction, and it's clearly more expensive. But yeah, if we can get Payjoin in every Lightning wallet for every Lightning channel open, and everyone saves money, especially in very tight mempools, massive win.
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm actually going to speak with Dan tomorrow on TFTC. That should be released on Monday. Logan, hope you saw that schedule change note I sent you earlier today. But business on air. No, I'm excited to learn more. Intuitively, it makes sense to me Matt understands the logistics, the mechanics better than I do. There are definitely trade-offs. Like we said earlier, the more options, the better. So hopefully BDK is successful in creating a good development kit that can be leveraged to create more options for more people. Here we go. Next on the software update list, NSEC Bunker version 1.0 has been released, opens up Nostr for shared projects and companies. So what is this? Is this the private key manager?
Yeah, by Pablo.
Yeah.
Is that a helicopter in your background, Marty?
A prop plane running advertisements on the
I
beach.
do hear. I hear the birds too.
Sorry. I've got to figure it out. My father-in-law's bedroom's
You're good.
disgusting right now. I can't go in there.
You gonna do them like that?
Alien interference. It's just birds, Chevy. Are birds aliens? Birds dinosaurs?
No, your mic
Nostr.
is doing like a new sound that we haven't heard before.
I'll mute.
It's like crackling.
Uh-oh. Alright, let me get through the software update list. Let me know if it's still confusing or
Let's
disruptive.
go for it. We're good. Stay humble, stack.
Nostr NOSTUR version 1.2.0 has been released. You can view long-form articles now. Tor browser version 12.5 has been released. This includes updates to circuit display, new Onion site icons, improved connection experience, accessibility improvements, Finnish language for all you Finns out there, and many other improvements. So running Tor, version 12.5 is now available. Blixt wallet version 0.6.8 has been released. Speed loader, is that what they're calling this, or is this?
I think it's
This wallet
released.
is open source link for Android. Focus on usability and user experience, powered by L&D Neutrino. Damus version 1.5 with removed note zaps approved by the App Store. So you can run Damus on iOS, but you cannot zap people anymore, which we touched on earlier.
You can no longer send Bitcoin transactions to tip posts that you enjoy because Tim Apple told you you're not allowed to, and because you cannot install an app outside of the App Store on your iPhone, which is insane.
Yeah, and add more color to this. Apple's complaints are pretty much unwarranted. They're trying to claim that zaps within Damus open up access to digital content, which just isn't true. The content's created first, and then you tip the content if you like it.
Yeah, I mean, Apple can just choose if you're allowed to be installed on an iPhone or not. Period.
Yeah.
Which, like,
Beware.
for the history of computers, that's just insane that people buy this. You buy this $1,000 computer and you don't get to choose which apps are installed on it. You have to go through this permissioned app store.
Do you think Jack Dorsey is successful at all in getting through to Tim Apple?
We'll see. I mean, I think part of the issue with centralized app stores and this permission kind of behavior is there's going to be inconsistent treatment, and Damus, for whatever reason, got stuck in this reviewer loophole, this reviewer eye, right, where the reviewers are just paying a lot of attention to it. There'll probably be a bunch of Nostr apps that get through the cracks that don't get banned for a while. Maybe they just start banning them across the board if they have any kind of zaps, any kind of Bitcoin transactions. I still don't think we're out of the woodwork in terms of banning Bitcoin apps. There could be a situation where Apple might even add it to Apple Pay Bitcoin support and just say like all the other apps aren't allowed. That's their control over of their ecosystem on iOS, on Apple and iPad, on iPhone and iPad. But long term, I think Freedom Tech wins. I think Bitcoin wins. I think Nostr wins. And if Apple doesn't allow those kind of apps, then consumers will eventually get upset and move, I would hope, to a platform that would allow them to use the apps they want to use.
Yeah, I want to hold your breath for that. That is actually a scary scenario. If Apple does add it to Apple Pay, they ban every other app, and we're wholly dependent on people essentially giving up their Apple products to use the wallet they want, and then most people are just leveraging Apple's wallet.
Like Marty, like you would still use your iPhone in that situation, right? Like you wouldn't leave.
I have lines that would cross it.
We'll see.
Blue text, blue check. It's all intertwined.
No, it all leads back to BlackRock and the WEF. You can just follow the connections.
Yeah. No, but actually, like staying on this too, like is this actually something we should be really worried about if that scenario you just laid out happens? Because if you go back to the 2017 fork wars, what really led to SegWit winning out over the 2 megabyte just pure block space raising was the fact that economic nodes sent transactions that signaled for SegWit, and that's why it eventually won. Like if there's a scenario in which Apple creates their wallet, doesn't let anybody else use it, and then their wallet's obviously leveraging their node, which if Bitcoin becomes popular and Apple becomes the most popular wallet in the world, like they're able to sort of manipulate and determine what is the Bitcoin because they have most of the economic activity running through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's similar concern over any kind of wallet that gets significant market share. Because if you're not using your own node to interact with the Bitcoin network, you're using someone else's node, and you're trusting them with both verifying the rules of the network, verifying if you own any Bitcoin in the first place, and trusting them with your privacy, which is why it's important that we make sure nodes are very accessible and that people can use their own nodes. I don't think that's a real concern, though, but we can cross that bridge when we cross it. But I'm going to be really disappointed in you, Marty, if Apple only allows you to use Bitcoin in the Apple Pay wallet and bans all Bitcoin wallets, and you continue to use iPhone with your blue check. I'm just going to be so sad. It's just going to be sad. I probably won't have any energy at that point. I'll probably be very close to just worrying about goats and other stuff. But I'm going to be so disappointed in you.
I'm not going to let you down. Don't worry. I've never done that. No, and I don't plan on starting when Tim Apple cucks everybody. How about that, though? President of the United States calls you Tim Apple, and that's your name for the rest of your life.
It's just funny.
It's very funny.
It's like I know his last name's Cook, but why would I call him that when I could just call him Tim Apple? It's just fucking funny. He should embrace it.
I think he has. He should also embrace Bitcoin in the way it's supposed to be embraced. At BTC Pay Server version 1.10.3 has been released. Minor update, a few bug fixes and improvements, nothing too crazy there. Bitcoin Keeper version 1.0.6 has been released, and as we mentioned earlier, for the time being, you can now do Whirlpool coin joins using iOS, but now with this update, it's available to Android users as well. So beware, freaks. Cashew Nutshell version 0.12.1 has been released. This is Kaye's, or Kali, however you pronounce it.
Nobody knows.
His Chaumian
Street in
eCash
Spanish.
wallet. It's not federated. He runs it by himself. It is a pretty cool wallet. I've tested it though. We're running this.
But anyone can be the custodian. Anyone can be the rug puller if they want,
Yes, beware.
but not federated.
Last but not least, on the software updates, Ministry of Nodes NodeBox plug and play Bitcoin node has been released. So this is a low cost plug and play Bitcoin node that costs as low as $300. They also have a higher.
So our boy Catan, Ride or Die Freak, who's been patiently waiting for his 1 sat per byte transactions to confirm for months now, was finally got sick of all the underpowered Raspberry Pi nodes. So now he's buying old Dell computers, loading them up with all the software you need, and we'll sell you one preloaded if you want. He also has amazing guides, so you can just go and buy a computer and set it up exactly the same way on your own and learn how to do it yourself. But if you want to buy a preloaded one, he's willing and able to do that for you. It's a very affordable price. It's a very accessible price, and you do end up supporting his educational efforts, his fantastic educational efforts, by giving him a small little cut of he's got a little margin baked in there. But remember that obviously, whenever you get any of these preloaded boxes, well, whether it's this one or the other one, you're trusting the person who puts it all together for you. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, Catan, we appreciate you, brother. Cool idea.
Shout out to Catan. Legend.
He's gonna, yeah. I mean, he's wrong about 1 sat per byte forever. Like frankly, he's wrong, and I hope he just hasn't. I hope he's managed his UTXOs in a way that he's not expecting 1 sat per byte forever, because it can get quite painful.
I'm with you, Catan. We're going to get our 1 sat per byte transactions cleared this year before Christmas, so keep them in the mempool. Last thing we have on the list, I didn't catch this. It's cool to see. Sort of cool. Slovakia lowers Bitcoin capital gains tax rate from 39% to 7%. Should be 0, but it seems like the
gradually then suddenly.
Slovakian government's looking to incentivize Bitcoin adoption and usage.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see more jurisdiction. What?
The Reddit user Baco SVK laid out the country's rationale behind the tax increase and reduction. Basically, nobody was putting their crypto profits to taxes, so this way people are motivated to acknowledge their gains. As a result, the decrease in tax will probably increase the amount of tax collected. So everybody was just selling Bitcoin, not claiming it, and they weren't getting any tax revenue. So like, all right, just give us 7%.
Well, what I was going to say is I think that there's advantages to different jurisdictions to become more friendly to Bitcoin, to attract business and increase tax revenue across different avenues. So, I mean, Bitcoin is a global money. It is a global network. It's a global movement. It has helped foster some of the greatest free markets humanity has ever seen. That trend will continue. And that trend includes jurisdictional marketplaces, essentially, where sovereign individuals choose which jurisdiction they want to be in based on a trade-off balance.
Yeah. Slovakians, capital gains tax lowered. BTC pins incentivizes selling. Boo. Well, at least here in America, you have to pay capital gains tax even if you spend Bitcoin. So beware of that. I know you're American, so if you're spending Bitcoin, beware of that. That's all we got for the list. That was a good 2-hour rip. Rand Moore is saying I might be getting microwaved. Is my mic?
Dude, it sounds so bad. It sounds so bad, but at least we got through it. We got through it. You're good. I mean, we could understand what you were saying. It's kind of a metaphor for what the people that don't verify their identity, their Twitter experience. Like this is what
Oh, you know what? I might be
Millions
put
of
my
us have
phone
to
on
deal
the
with on
line.
a daily basis.
Is it
You had
better
your
now?
phone on the line? No, it's still
Yeah.
fucked. You should try and troubleshoot it off air before your next show. Or not, but definitely before next Thursday for the next Rabbit Hole recap. Get that sorted.
Sorry,
I mean, before we wrap up, I just wanted to do a huge shout out to all the ride or die freaks out there, including Joshua.
I think we're kicking Joshua out of the Ride or Die Club for complaining. You're
I
out
was
of the
giving
club
him
right
a
now,
bone.
Joshua. We might let you back in, but for now, we don't like complainers in the Ride or Die Club.
Fuck Marty. He doesn't get to choose. This has been great. I'm excited. I feel like this next cycle is going to be crazy. I feel like we're getting started. A lot of reasons to be hopeful. Very optimistic. I just think this was a good rip, and it's been a good week, and I hope people start to practice self-custody more, and learn how to use the tools.
Well, this Prime Trust stuff and layered custodian stuff is never fun to see. It's never fun to see people lose access to their Bitcoin or lose their dollars. But history has shown and time has shown whenever these events do happen, whether it be BlockFi, Celsius, FTX, Prime Trust, Mt. Gox, people do learn
Barry
a lesson,
Silbert.
or Barry Silbert, and they do begin to self-custody, and that is evidenced in the fact that the amount of Bitcoin held in exchanges is falling and has been falling pretty consistently.
Yeah.
I think it's at its lowest point in like 2 or 3 years.
The path to hyper-Bitcoinization is billions of people getting rugged over and over and over again until they take self-custody and personal responsibility. And that is the unfortunate reality. And it sucks. But it's also where my conviction comes from, because that's how Freedom Tech wins. Freedom Tech wins by just people getting burned, and then realizing the need for personal responsibility, searching for the tools. We need to have the tools and education ready for them when they do, and we will, and then we win. But there's going to be pain in the midterm, and the bank runs will continue.
Bank runs are just getting started, freaks.
Yes, sir.
They're definitely going to continue. And to Matt's point, people do need to get burned. They do need to get rugged. They don't need to, but they will. And that's how hard lessons will be learned. But we hope
most do
through this medium,
some
through this show, coming week in and week out. Hopefully, the show helps many of you skip the ruggings.
Yeah, there are dozens of people that can escape it, which is good. Every person that gets to skip touching the stove is a win. And every person that realizes after the fact and then takes personal responsibility and learns how to use the tools is a massive win. I mean, with all that said, this is great, Marty. I love you, freaks. Love you, Marty. Thank you, Logan. Stay humble, stack sats.
Love you, freaks. Love you, Matt. Fuck you, Logan. Peace and love, freaks.